What is what is up, Raider Nation? What is up? Here we are. What is up? And hope everyone is having a good night. Meant to do this show last night, had some things that were going on last night. So here we are. Um there's a lot to talk. Um we're in a really big off season for this team. They made a lot of changes this off season. And in the end, we're hoping that they're positive changes. Um, I think at the end of the day, there's a lot of changes that we made that I liked, especially on the coaching staff. Um, but here we are. The first discussion of tonight is um, Raiders prime time. Should the Raider fans actually be thanking the NFL for keeping Vegas off the prime time games, or is it disrespect? And the way I start thinking about this, because I wanted to be fair about it, there is a lot to think about when you have a young roster like we have. We have a lot of talent. There's no doubt. But I think when we're looking at the team that we have, I think that we're a year away and we can I think even if we're not a year away, I think the primetime games would hurt us more than help us. I think that I'm okay with us not having primetime games. And if they happen, they're probably going to happen later in the year if we're showing up. And that's just kind of how it is. And I look at the schedule and yeah, I see a lot of games. I'm like, yeah, there's potentially wins here, but we've looked at the schedule the same way every year and we've done this for years. It's been the same thing every year. It's, oh, these are winnable games. But the Raiders don't win winnable games. They win the games they probably shouldn't half the time. And I think when you look at this team, yeah, this is a lot better of a team than I probably have seen over the last 10 years. And yeah, there's probably potentially the best offensive line that we've probably had as a team in the last decade at this point. So there's a lot of discussion on a lot of position groups being really, really strong. And I'm not going to disagree. I think having Max Crosby only makes you better. I mean, the 14th overall pick is a luxury. It's something that maybe you want, but it's not something you need. And I think when we look at this roster, I think there's a lot of looking at it wrong. And I like the team we have. I think there's a lot of potential to continue to grow and get better. I think there's a lot of potential for growth because I think we're young. I think we're one of the youngest teams out there. You have a lot of guys from last year that didn't get chances to play, and they're going to get chances this year. So I ultimately do believe that when you look at this team, there's potential for a lot of growth. Now, I believe early in the year, it's a blessing more than anything to have your season start with the Dolphins. No disrespect. And I believe this at the highest level. I believe there is no game that is easy because I think you can lose any game. And I ultimately think that no game is easy because these guys are all professionals for a reason. They're better than the average athlete. Let's just be honest. But I think with us, excuse me, with us being a young roster, us being a young team, I think it's a good decision where we are and where we're going to be. There's no reason to rush Mendoza out there, probably. I think you start week one with Miami, and I think that can be a big win for your team because you build the momentum early in the year and you try to carry it throughout the year. That's the biggest thing. We have to get the momentum early in the year. And we had a lot. I felt as a fan last year when we beat the Patriots in week one, I felt that was a big win because a lot of times when you look at also East Coast games, the Raiders don't perform well in those games. So when they performed well and they came out and they won a game against New England, especially on the road, I was like, hey, you know what? This team might be good. But it went downhill from there. So I like the schedule we have. I don't have any problems. There's also the potential that any of our late season games become flexed and go to a primetime game. So, again, we have to earn our spot. I think the biggest thing for me is you have to go out there and earn your spot. And we absolutely did not earn it with our performance last year. Our performance last year was terrible, it was downright just disgraceful. It downright was not anything to be excited about. I got to the point where I didn't even want to watch games last year, and I'm a big Raider fan, and it hurt to watch this team because there was no effort, there was no love for the game, and even when we beat Kansas City at the end of the year, I probably couldn't be paid to care any freaking less that we beat them. We beat Chris Saludicon, who, by the way, I'll be real, never heard of the guy in my life before he had even started a game. So if that tells you anything, I mean, a lot of you guys probably didn't even know who this guy was. This guy definitely shouldn't have been starting for Kansas City. So, um, yeah, I mean, the win, yeah, I mean, it in general is pretty nice to beat your division rivals, but we have one division win in 2 years, so take it with what you can. I think the biggest thing for me too also is, there's the big time potential that Kirk Cousins is your starting quarterback. And if we're just going to be real, Kirk Cousins is not known for being a good playoff quarterback. So I don't think it hurts us. We're a young roster trying to build off and grow. So definitely don't have any problem. Um, and the next discussion for today will be Jack Besh breakout candidate. I think he is a big time breakout candidate. I think that um, his route running, his timing as a route runner is on point. He knows where to be, and I think that matters in this offense. Um, you know, having the timing on your routes and being able to get open in the right areas and really just find open areas across the field. He was very good when he got targets. A lot of people will take away from what he did because we weren't a successful team. And just to be frank, I don't know many wide receivers that would have been successful with Geno Smith and these guys. So that's just that. Did it suck? Yeah, it sucked 100%. But I think that pain of having to watch, one of the worst seasons you know, in your damn franchise history, um, I think it's worth it because I think in the end that the fact is you went from Pete Carroll and you went out and got the best coach in this cycle. And I was also the same one that thought that Pete Carroll could make a difference here. But the more I watched his stubbornness moving off of Geno Smith and stuff, and the fact that he was in a press conference and said himself out his own mouth that we just needed more practice. We just knew the season was over in week 3 when he said that. I felt the season was over by week 4, week 3. Um, the way that we played, the way we didn't show up, the way we were so unmatched and just unwilling to make plays. Max Crosby was probably the only person that cared. Jermaine Pratt wanted out immediately, and then immediately followed up being um, released to being signed and having like 20 freaking tackles. Um, And that was kind of the story of the Las Vegas Raiders over the Patrick Graham experience. It's, oh, we lost this guy and he went out there and showed up somewhere else. Patrick Graham was undoubtedly one of the worst defensive coaches to come through this organization. Um, this guy had zero developed talent here. His development was not it. He was not a good coach. his scheme, his adjustments. He could not make adjustments. And then when he came out here and said, hey, we're going to make an emphasis on tackling, because by the way, tackling was terrible. Under him, it was some of the worst. And I mean, I watched Paul Gunther's defenses, terrible tackling. Patrick Graham's was damn near on par some games. It just was that bad. This team could not tackle. And then they signed old players half the time that just were not good. There's a lot of, like, okay. Again, I'm happy that we're moving on to who we have in this staff. Rob Leonard, I think, is going to make a big difference here. Jack Besh. I think the second year guys, Ashton Genty, Jack Besh, are going to take the jump on offense. I think Darren Porter is very capable of making a jump. Depending on Jermod McCoy and how they choose to go through with him, he could be a really big time player for us this year. There's a lot of undoubted talent here, and I think we have the GM hire right. John Spytek is a great GM. He has built this roster, even with mismanagement and the non-understanding of how to build an organization from Mark Davis, who also was very keen on hiring Pete Carroll at one point. I know it was reported by a lot of people apparently that we wanted Ben Johnson, but we did not go all in on Ben Johnson like the reports did state. But I think we got our guy, and I think he's a better coach than Ben Johnson. I do. I think Klint Kubiak is a guy that I think, again, Jack Besh, Ashton Genty, I think Caleb Rogers can be good. I think JPJ can be good as a guard. I think Tyler Linderbaum is going to perform as one of the best centers in the game of football. I think Colton Miller, when he's on the field, I think he can be absolutely one of the best guys out there. But again, this is going to be such an improvement in the scheme and the talent. I think there's a lot more talent on this roster. But I also don't think last year's team had the least amount of talent. But we performed as the worst team because I do believe coaching weighed down the talent that we did have. Now, I'm not going to sit here and argue that we had the most talent in the league or nothing like that. But I do believe we had talent enough to win at least 3 to 4 more games. But we also had, I think, the worst coaching in football with Pete Carroll. I think when you look at the team, I also said throughout the year that the entire issue on offense didn't have quite anything to do with the offensive line on the pass blocking, because there was a lot of plays that Geno Smith himself should have made in the Raiders jersey, but he couldn't even make the dump offs. He couldn't even hit the 5-yard outs. He couldn't even hit the 7-yard the 7-yard routes. He couldn't hit anything from the short to the intermediate to the long ball. He couldn't hit a fucking backside of a barn if he was attempting to. He was terrible. His accuracy was so bad. Again, everything. We fell apart as a team because he was also one of the guys that they chose to shoot. Because they chose to, they wanted him to lead, and he wasn't a leader. And there also was an offensive line coach, because we were quite literally the only organization that was going to hire Pete Carroll's son as the offensive line coach. We're the only organization, and we did that. Now, I will never argue against the fact that we probably over the last 15 years have made some of the worst decisions across football. but this team is still in a good position to take a jump if Klint Kubiak and that offense get going. And I think the defense is going to get going this year. I do think the defense is going to have its first year of looking like a somewhat manageable defense in terms of how good they are. You know, they're not going to be the worst defense across multiple. The Russian defense was also terrible, by the way. It wasn't even just the tackling, it was the rushing defense. The Russian defense was pitiful. Um, it was pitiful. Number three. Does so the next thing we're talking about is the pass rush. Will Max Crosby finally have enough help this season? Can this entire pass rush unit take a major jump? Is adding Kwity Paye enough opposite of Max Crosby? And of course, we brought back Malcolm Kuntz after he returned from injury last year, and he didn't look like himself. But you know, not many people do after telling Terry Achilles. They did draft Kieran Crawford at the 60th pick, and he does add some pass rush juice from the SEC. He was like third in the SEC at 43 pressures, is what it was. He was okay. He had like 6.5 sacks or something. He was good. He was productive. And that's what we need. Because Kwity Paye, to me, is more of a run stopping guy. Because he is a better run stopper than pass rusher. But I think now you have Crosby. You have Kieran Crawford. You have, you're gonna have Malcolm Kuntz out there because you did bring this guy back, and it wasn't for a backup role unless he loses his job, which again, that's up to him and how he shows up in this offseason. But I think he's gonna be a starter. At least from everything I've seen. He's doing fine. I think Max Crosby is probably gonna end up being I think he could be a 12 to 13 sack guy. I think Malcolm can give us. I think I could see him giving 6 to 8 sacks. I think I could. And then, again, I think Kieran. I don't know if Kieran will start right away, but he could. I would not argue against it. I think he could. We'll just have to see and wait. But there's a lot of young guys. Klint did bring some guys over here. He didn't really bring everybody, but he brought some good guys. He brought really good coaches. We have a great coaching staff that's compared to last year and the last 2 years. The quarterback situation looks just enough. I think it's better than what we had. I think Kirk Cousins can be just enough in this offense to be productive. I think until, of course, we see it on the field, I think the wide receiver room is a question mark, but I think they can be productive. Let's see. So what's that? Where is it? Does Rob Leonard's defensive system unlock this defensive line more than the last system? I think that excuse me, sorry. I had that question and I sent that to myself. I forgot to write that in there. But I think the system is better. I think it's better suited with the players that we have. Patrick Graham's system was all over the place. There really was no consistency in what he seemingly wanted for his defense. Um, I don't think that he was that good of a defense coordinator. I think he was part of the problem and why we didn't have anybody under him develop because of him. Outside of Crosby, who was not developed by Patrick Graham, nobody has sat here developed. Everybody has left, and there's been no consistency. So I think we have a better defensive system now, too. I think they're going to have a better defensive system, but we'll have to wait and see. And then last one was last conversation we'll talk about tonight is, of course, over under 7.5 wins. I think it's a tough question because I do think this team has some really winnable games. You have the Cardinals and Titans who, let's just be real, both teams they have a chance to be bad again. I think Cardinals more than the Titans because the Titans I do think improved a lot. We have the Browns, and we should probably beat them. I mean, I know they made the coaching change, but I think I think that they have more to fix, and I don't quite think that they have the talent that we have. But I don't know, man. They could be good. They could also be really bad. And then I think you go down the rest of the schedule. Again, you have the Jets, the Dolphins, the Cardinals. You have very winnable games. They could end up with 7 or 8 wins. But I also don't think they're going to get swept in their division. I think that we win. Well, we could win 2 or 3. I mean, you could win. Just like I said, you have to win the games against teams like I think the Cardinals, Browns, Jets, and Dolphins genuinely should be all wins. But again, we have to show up. Because again, any given week you can lose. And there's a lot to follow along with during this OTA and during this next process. So I'm excited. I hope they show up, and we'll try to get more shows out to you guys here soon. Hopefully not so late either. But I think these were, again, I think that this offseason was successful for what they should have, wanted to fix, and I think they can be a good enough team. So, I mean, they can double their wins. I mean, it'd be nice to just see double the wins that they had last year. But I think I'm gonna head out. It's 12:30.